Cooper didn't say much after that, just sipped his coffee like it was medicine and kept his eyes low. Guys like him, they never smell the cordite, never feel the recoil, never wiped someone else's blood off their hands, but you can tell they're carrying something just as heavy. They live in the in-between, watching death through a lens, never being there but never really leaving either. That night, after chow, I walked back to the barracks and lay on my bunk staring at the ceiling. My ears were still ringing from the day's gunfire, but what stuck with me wasn't the sound, it was that kid's face in the hallway. I kept wondering if he was still sitting there in the dirt when we left, if the interpreter could explain to him why strangers with rifles had stormed through his home. You tell yourself it's for the bigger picture, for the mission, for the safety of people who'll never know your name, but in the quiet, the picture feels smaller, sharper, and it's got eyes. 2 days later, we were out again. This time it was supposed to be a simple overwatch. We were positioned on a ridge about a mile from a road that Intel said was being used for smuggling. Our job was to observe and report. The drone overhead would track any targets, and if needed, a quick reaction force would intercept. Simple, clean, no direct contact. That was the plan. The ridge gave us a clear view of the road, a pale scar cutting through the desert, nothing moving but wind and sand. Hours passed. The sun baked us from above, and the ground radiated heat like a stovetop. I could hear the faint buzz of the drone again, like a wasp circling just out of reach. Cooper's voice came over comms, steady as ever. Got a convoy coming in from the east, 4 trucks, spacing looks military, no civilians in sight. We adjusted positions, scopes trained on the shimmer of heat in the distance until shapes emerged, dusty, battered pickups with men in the beds. They weren't waving. Cooper started calling it out. First and second trucks, armed personnel, mounted weapons in the back. Third truck, looks like cargo covered with tarps. Fourth truck's empty bed, possible rear security. My mouth went dry. Armed convoys didn't drive this far into open ground without reason. We relayed to command, and the order came back quick. Stand by for possible engagement, drone has weapons hot. From our position, we were ghosts. They didn't know we were there, and part of me wanted it to stay that way. The other part was already counting how fast they could close the distance if something went wrong. Then it happened. The third truck hit a patch of rough ground, the tarp shifted, and something metallic glinted in the sun. Cooper didn't even pause. Visual confirmation, rockets, possible anti-air, command, request immediate strike. There was a pause, then the kind of flat, cold affirmative that means someone far away just signed off on ending lives. We held our breath. 30 seconds later, the first truck vanished in a bloom of dust and fire. The sound reached us a moment after, a low, rolling crack that you feel in your ribs. The second truck tried to turn, but the next missile took it dead center, sending shrapnel in a halo. Men were running, some firing wildly at the sky. The third truck went up, and whatever was under that tarp cooked off in a chain of smaller explosions. The fourth truck managed to veer off the road, bouncing into the scrub, but it didn't get far before it was swallowed by smoke. From up on that ridge, we just watched. Cooper kept talking through it, voice calm, noting positions, tracking runners. I couldn't see their faces from that distance, but I could see the way they moved, the desperation, the panic, the way they clung to the ground like it could save them. When it was over, the road was nothing but burning skeletons of trucks, black smoke curling into the empty sky. The silence after was worse than the noise. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. We hiked back in as the sun was going down, the sky bleeding orange into purple. Back at the fob, Cooper was sitting alone again, same coffee, same stare. I sat across from him this time. That convoy today, I said, not sure where I was going with it. He just nodded. Yeah. I asked if he ever thought about the people after the strike. Every time, he said, eyes not leaving the cup. And sometimes, they think about me too. You can see it in the way they look up, like they know something's watching, even if they can't hear it. Later that week, the mission tempo ramped up. We were getting more chatter about enemy movement, more requests for eyes in the sky. One night, Cooper called me over to the drone control station. The feed was black and white, grainy but sharp enough to see the outline of a compound. Watch this, he said. On the screen, 2 figures moved across a courtyard, one taller, one shorter, maybe a teenager. Intel says the older one's a bomb maker. We've been tracking him for weeks. I watched as they disappeared into a building. Minutes passed. Then more figures came out, 5 of them, all armed. Cooper marked them with little squares on the screen, tagging each one. Command's debating a strike, he said, almost like it was small talk. But I could feel the tension in his shoulders. The figures moved around, some entering other buildings, some lingering by a small well. Then, the teenager came back out, carrying what looked like a jug of water. He set it down, looked up at the sky for a long moment, then went back inside. We didn't strike that night. Command held off, said they wanted a cleaner window, fewer unknowns. Cooper didn't say much, just leaned back in his chair, but I could tell he was relieved. A week later, though, I overheard he'd been the one to pull the trigger on the same target. The feed had shown the man loading explosives into a truck, and this time, there was no teenager in sight. Cooper told me later it was quick, clean, no secondaries. But I noticed he didn't drink coffee that day. He drank nothing at all. By the end of the month, I'd started to understand something about this war. For us on the ground, it's the heat, the dust, the adrenaline when you hear that first crack of gunfire. For the guys in the trailers with the screens, it's a different kind of fight. Long hours staring at the same patch of dirt, waiting for someone to move wrong, knowing that when they do, you might be the last thing they never see. Both of us go home to the same bunks, the same chow, the same restless nights. And both of us keep seeing things when we close our eyes. We were running on fumes by the time the call came in that morning. Sleep had been scarce the past week, missions stacked one on top of the other until the days bled into each other. I was sitting on the edge of my bunk lacing my boots when the PA system crackled and the sergeant's voice came through, sharp and clipped. We had 20 minutes to gear up and get to the motor pool. The brief was quick, too quick. A patrol in a neighboring district had been hit hard, 2 vehicles disabled, and they were taking fire from multiple positions. Our squad was going in as support, along with a couple of other elements. The drone was already overhead, eyes on target, and Cooper's voice came over the radio before we even rolled out. Multiple hostiles in fortified positions, north and west of the patrol's last known location. They're dug in, heavy machine guns on the west side. Be advised, there's movement in the alleys south of your route, possible reinforcements. The roads were worse than usual, pocked with fresh craters and littered with debris. The smell of smoke hung heavy, and somewhere in the distance you could hear the dull thump of indirect fire. We moved fast, Humvee engines growling, suspension groaning with every rut and drop. Cooper kept feeding us updates, his voice the only constant in the chaos. Contact west, patrol is returning fire. They're pinned down behind their lead vehicle. Hostiles in 3 separate structures, multiple firing points. When we hit the outer edge of the fight, we could see the smoke rising, hear the rattle of gunfire. The trapped patrol was hunkered down in the shell of a mud-walled compound, the ground around them chewed up by rounds. We dismounted under fire, bullets snapping overhead, and sprinted for cover. The air was thick with dust and grit, the kind that grinds in your teeth and makes every breath taste like metal. Smitty was yelling orders, Morales was laying down suppressive fire, and I was trying to spot the muzzle flashes through the haze. Cooper's voice cut in again, urgent now. Be advised, 2 armed individuals moving toward your position from the south alley. Possible flanking attempt. I pivoted, scanning the narrow space between 2 collapsed walls, and there they were, 2 figures crouching low, rifles in hand. I didn't think, just squeezed off 3 rounds. One dropped, the other stumbled back, firing wildly before disappearing into the shadows. The fight was a blur after that, short bursts of movement, diving for cover, the crack and thud of rounds finding walls inches from your head. The drone feed gave us the edge. Cooper called targets like he was playing chess, always 2 moves ahead. North building, 2nd floor, left window, he's got an RPG. Take him out now. Morales didn't hesitate, sending a burst through the window that silenced the threat. West side roof, prone position, he's spotting for their gunner. Smitty nailed him with 2 clean shots. We started pushing them back, 1 position at a time, until the firing slowed, then stopped. We found the trapped patrol shaken but alive, 2 wounded bad enough to need immediate evac. While the medics worked, we swept the area, clearing buildings one by one. Inside one, we found a small room with a makeshift bed, a pot of tea still warm, and a map on the wall with marks that looked a lot like patrol routes. Someone had been planning this for a while. As we loaded back into the vehicles, Cooper came over the radio again, his tone different. "You've got movement east, about 8 heat signatures, carrying something heavy. Could be weapons. They're moving away fast. Command ordered us to pursue." We tore across the rough ground, dust plumes chasing us, until the heat signatures came into view. They were on foot, sprinting hard, 2 of them struggling under the weight of a long, tarp-covered bundle. Morales accelerated, closing the gap, and we dismounted to give chase on foot. My lungs burned, my legs felt like lead, but adrenaline kept me moving. When we caught up, they dropped the bundle and scattered. We grabbed one, the others melting into the terrain like they were part of it. The bundle turned out to be a disassembled mortar, wrapped in cloth to muffle the sound of metal on metal. We secured it and the prisoner, then started the long ride back. The sun was dipping low by the time we reached the fob, shadows stretching across the compound. Cooper was waiting outside the ops center, and for the first time, I saw him smile, not wide, but enough to say he was glad we'd all come back. He asked about the prisoner, and when we told him about the mortar, he nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said, "I saw them running. I thought for a second about what would happen if I didn't say anything. Just let them go. But then I remembered the patrol you were pulling out today, and I knew I couldn't." That night, the base was quieter than usual. Some guys played cards, others cleaned their gear, but there was a weight in the air, the kind that comes after a close call. I found myself in the ops center, watching the drone feed over Cooper's shoulder. He was tracking a lone figure moving along a dirt road, carrying a sack over his shoulder. "Farmer," he said, almost to himself. The figure stopped, set the sack down, and started digging by the roadside. My gut tightened. Cooper zoomed in, the image sharpening until we could see the glint of metal in the man's hands. "Not a farmer," Cooper said, and his voice was flat now. Command gave the go for a strike, and seconds later, the road was empty. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there listening to the hum of the generators, thinking about how one man could be a farmer in the morning and an enemy by afternoon. And how the drone never blinks, it just keeps watching, recording everything, no matter what you wish it would forget.